Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing the novel A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. Talk a little bit about the author, go into a brief spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I would recommend the book to, and what I will be reading for next time. Anthony Burgess he's passed away, a polyglot. He was skilled in many languages. He was a writer born in the early part of the 20th century, wrote all his life, published many, many novels. Clockwork Orange is by far his best known work. I had a professor in a college course one time tell me a story about how he came across him in a park after a conference or during a conference, and Anthony Burgess was sitting on a park bench essentially composing music in his head and writing it down. So, I mean, his intellect was kind of on another level. He was very talented and brilliant man. This book, A Clockwork Orange, like I said, is still his best-known work. He wrote this, according to the introduction, relatively quickly. He says in the introduction he wrote it in about 3 weeks. I actually believe that's probably true, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. What this is about, A Clockwork Orange, if you're not familiar with the Stanley Kubrick version, it is about a teenage delinquent who is 15, I believe, when the novel starts, who is part of a gang in a futuristic style London. It's very much I would say, an alternate universe to the one that we're kind of familiar with. But he is a criminal. He robs people as part of his gang, gets into fights, assaults people both physically and sexually. And he is captured during one of his kind of nighttime raids and is put into jail. After that, he becomes the subject of a kind of an experimental procedure to remove kind of criminality from his background, and that kind of goes horribly wrong without getting into any spoilers to keep it vague. So that's A Clockwork Orange. It's a very difficult book to review in the sense that it's probably not like anything else I've read. Starting off with the language, it is written using slang that Burgess invented that was a combination of English rhyming slang and Russian, as well as just words that he created on his own. It's a kind of deceptively short book. I think it clocks under 200 pages, but you kind of find yourself reading and rereading as your brain's trying to adapt to this new language and understand what some of these words means without a glossary. There are glossaries online if you do need that. But that, for just a joy of reading perspective, that's probably my favorite thing about the book. I had seen the Kubrick version about 15 years ago, and the plot of the book is very faithful to that, or the plot of the movie is very faithful to the book until the very end, and I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler. If it's a spoiler if you've seen the Kubrick version. The foreword for this book, and this was published later. The version I have was published in '86. The book was originally written in the 1960s. Burgess basically says that the version that Kubrick filmed was the version that did not include his final chapter, and so there is a final chapter that's a little bit different than the version that Kubrick filmed. I personally, overall, while there's an argument that chapter doesn't fit, I enjoyed the way the book ended. So I did enjoy those things. I think just the vividness in which he writes, he's able to kind of capture violence without getting gory, and I think he is really good at hammering the theme of the book home, which is that good and evil are things that are largely choices that people make, and it's impossible to remove those choices from people without inherently damaging them as people. So I enjoyed those things. I guess some of the things I didn't like, kind of back to the point before about it being written in 3 weeks. The book is kind of the plot is very, very, very straightforward. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. I think towards the end of the book, some of the things that happen feel a little rushed, especially in the last couple chapters. There's a lot of changes that kind of go back and forth in the character. I think the character of Alex is believable as a 15-year-old in this world. I think what's kind of cool about the book is you can kind of see, if you read it, some of the influences it has had, the legs that it's had in culture. I think definitely the movie Repo Man owes a lot to this book. So kind of getting into my final review of the book and my final feelings on it, I would say it's maybe not I wouldn't describe the book as necessarily enjoyable from a plot standpoint. It's not necessarily a book that's going to make you feel great, but I think if you're a fan of literature in general, I think it's definitely a book to check out. I would not recommend this to people who are probably under the age of 18 for sure. Like I said, there's some pretty graphic things. If you're someone who struggles with depictions of sexual violence, it's going to be a difficult book. Like I said, the character of Alex is 15. There are children in the book who are 10 who have some pretty grotesque things happen to them. And so if any of that sends alarm bells ringing, then it's going to be tough. But overall, that's A Clockwork Orange. If you've seen the Kubrick movie, like I said, it's very faithful to the book, so you kind of know what you're getting into. I think, I think that's the book. I think if you're on the bubble, it's a relatively quick read, so I would say give it a try. So until next time, that's A Clockwork Orange. Next time, I'm going to be reading the new Stephen King book, The Institute. And until next time, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you've read A Clockwork Orange and feel strongly about it, please feel free to leave comments in the section below. I feel in some ways the review is a little bit short because I had seen the movie prior to reading the book. So I feel like my feelings that I had that would have been maybe more on a deeper level were probably things I went through when I first saw the movie. It's probably been 15 years. So if you do have strong feelings about the book one way or the other, please feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. As always, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and until next time, bye.